Week 9, top 40 wide receiver rankings for you ladies and hoes out there. We are breaking it down as always. Adam and Andrew, we are back. We were sick last week. We are still sick in the head this week, but physically we are feeling a lot better, all right? We're going to break it down into the top 12, then 13 through 24, and talk about the dudes in which we have the biggest disparities in thy rankings, all right? So let's jump right in. We got CeeDee Lamb at 1, A.J. Brown, the GOAT, at 2, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Tyreek Hill, he biked, Drake London, Malik, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Terry McLaurin, Devontae Smith. So not much to really talk about there. We could talk about the return of the Rams receivers. So we have Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua.
They back.
Puka came out of fucking nowhere, ended up having a big game. This was Cooper Kupp's first game back. I still think something looked a little wonky with Cooper Kupp watching the game there.
For sure.
He didn't have his explosion, in my opinion. I thought he looked a little weird, but I don't know that it matters.
Yeah, injury report should have said old.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably what it should have said.
Yeah, and like obviously in our league, I got rid of him because I was like weighing the pros and cons of, you know, Cooper Kupp comes back. Like, what are the chances he goes, 8 for 120 and a touchdown? I'm like, he's old, coming back from the high ankle sprain. He'll get the high target share, but I'm still hesitant that he's like the guy in this offense because the second half of last year plus week 1, I don't actually remember. Did Puka go down in week 1 this year?
Yeah, he went.
Oh, this year,
like right before halftime, I think is right.
Okay, and that's when Cooper. Okay, so we didn't really get to see a Puka and Cooper Kupp together. The only sample size we have with them together was the second half of last year, where Puka was like, a dominant force. Cooper Kupp played well also, but if I'm betting on one of them the rest of the season, it's Puka for sure for me.
Well, yeah, well, I think that was the thing about Cooper Kupp that was intriguing, at least to me, was there seemed to be a lot more, I would say, pessimism, honestly, on Puka, everything you heard on his timetable to return. So it's like, all right, well, maybe there's a window where if Cooper Kupp is the only, Matthew Stafford, he's only has eyes for Cooper Kupp, all right, even if he's not looking 100%, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Puka definitely coming back the same week at the time that did. I guess it makes it feel worse when you watch Cooper Kupp not look 100%.
Yeah, the dude had like 40% of the targets, so it's like I bet Cooper Kupp probably would have had a decent chunk of those.
It's
big time.
Yeah, I mean, the way that Puka came out this last week was kind of nuts. 56% of the snaps and finishing the week the way that he finished the week.
Well, I will say, because I've heard that go around a lot, like they were part-time players. They were, but most of the snaps that they were off the field were run-blocking snaps. So they ran a lot of the routes. Like Cooper Kupp was in the 85% like route run rate. Puka was lower. Puka, it was funny because like Kupp looked like he lacked a little explosiveness. Puka kind of just looked like it looked like he was like just getting his feet underneath him. Like he was just so excited to be out there. So like it was weird. He looked rusty playing the game of football.
I agree. Because when I was watching him, I was like, he doesn't look that great right now, but he's getting a lot of points because of the volume. And he's also like, to me, he looked bigger than he's looked in previous games. And it was like he was just trying to he said in the post-game interview, like he just wanted to run through somebody's face.
Right. That's what I mean. It just kind of looked like he was like, I'm getting on the football field for the first time. I'm like, I'm too excited. I don't know what to do with my hands kind of thing,
Yeah, like, I mean, when you play a sport and you miss it for that long, like it was funny him after the game talking about it too, because you could see it a mile away that like he was just as excited as a kid would be if they missed a couple weeks.
Did you see that interview, Nick?
No, I didn't.
He said he was like, I was an iPad kid growing up, and he was like, I literally just would watch like Lawrence Taylor highlights before games, and you just get hyped up, like ready to just like run somebody over.
Yeah.
And he's like, literally before this game, I just pulled out the iPad. I started watching Lawrence Taylor highlights, and like I just wanted to run somebody over.
He looked like he was like ticking, like he was actually freaking out as he was talking about it.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys then. You have him ranked really closely. You have Kupp at 10, Puka at 9. You have it basically flipped 9 and 11. Mm-hmm. Rest of season, they play against Seattle, so I think it's a really good matchup for the Rams. I think it should be a relatively high-scoring game. Would you take Kupp over Puka rest of season? And if not, why would you rank Kupp higher this week?
I still view them fairly similarly the rest of the season. I don't really prefer one over the other by that much of a margin. I think for me it's more so that we've kind of seen Cooper Kupp become a little bit more of a red zone guy. And so if he gets the touchdown like he did last week, again, I think there's a chance that he outproduces Puka. So that's the only reason why I have him above is just because I think he has maybe a better chance to get into the end zone. But overall, I think both of these guys are just set it and forget it wide receiver ones.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you that I'm going to lean Puka every week, but I think that there's a range of outcomes where, like, to your point, you were saying how they were on the field for basically took them off for the run blocking plays. I think we're not talking about the quarterbacks. I think Stafford's huge arrow up, getting both these guys back at the same time.
Yeah.
And I feel like if we saw that on Thursday, we get a long week here now. I feel like both of these guys.
Agreed. 10 days rest.
Might even be needing to go higher for me. I've had a hard time moving them past to the guys up front, though, because I like all of them so much.
Imagine Puka on a full week of practice.
Yeah, so, like, the other thing, too, that I think was an underlying narrative that no one really talked about is we came into the year talking about how, like, Kyron's going to be a beast because it's, like, run-blocking unit, and just the offensive line is way better than we imagined it would be last year. Then everyone got hurt in the beginning of the year, and they looked terrible, and Stafford had no time. Their, like, entire O-line is back and healthy pretty much at this point now. So I think that's another, like, you saw Kyron run really well. Stafford had time to throw the ball. Like, when they're at full strength, they're one of the better offenses in the NFL, obviously. So I think with the receivers getting back, the O-line getting back, like, everything is kind of clicking there. So I think they're both, like, I guess, let me phrase the question a little differently then. If you had to put money on one of these receivers, like I told you, okay, we're going to look back from week 9 through 17. One of these guys is going to be a top 5 fantasy wide receiver, while the other one is like the wide receiver 15. Who would you put money on that was the wide receiver 5?
Ooh, so I do know that they both play the whole time. Oh,
I would put my money on Puka.
I would too.
Yeah,
but I will.
That's
say,
why. That's I think we all would.
I will say though that the way you have phrased that question though, I'm like 55, 45 because if you told me Cooper Kupp plays the whole time, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up finishing inside the top 10. The biggest thing for me is like watching him like that with his age. It does not give me a lot of confidence that he's going to make it through this whole year.
That's what I mean. Like, okay, week 1, that huge explosion week he had, all that stuff was like around the line of scrimmage, being super agile, being able to get shifty, like sprint full speed in motion. And not that he can't get back there this year, but like if Thursday night was any indicator of it, it's going to take a minute for him to get back into that role. So I'm like a little bit hesitant there. Not that I guess I would sell him, but if you could sell him like really high right now for these prices, like if you were able to flip Kupp for Malik's one spot ahead of him, I would do that.
The only thing I will say that is if you want to have more of an optimistic view on Kupp, typically you'll see if it's close on a return that they don't come back on Thursday because it's a short week. So the fact that they did do that and now they get 10 days rest, it's like, all right, maybe they're going to get – maybe they'll be looking a lot better off that long.
I agree. Well, the other thing that I was nervous about
was wild.
Puka was wild.
I had to throw him into my rankings right before the game started. I'm like, that's crazy.
I also thought it was weird that, like, okay, Cooper Kupp, they were like, okay, he's practicing. He misses the previous game on Sunday, and then they're like, oh, he's good to go 3 days later. I was like, that feels a little sus too. Like, he can't play now, but give him 3 days and he's good to go. So I thought he was far less than 100% in the Thursday game. But again, 10 days rest, we'll probably see a different version of both of these receivers. Let's keep moving down, though. We've got Jaden Reed at 13, Garrett Wilson at 14. Let's talk about, I guess, the Jets wide receivers right now, because Garrett Wilson's kind of been getting home a little bit since Davante Adams has come over, and I think that was one of the possible narratives that could happen. Davante finally frees up Garrett Wilson to not see, safety coverage, not see cornerback 1 coverage. And Christian Gonzalez, I believe, shadowed Davante Adams for the majority of that game, which, ended up leaving Garrett Wilson playing against the CB2, and any matchup where he's playing against that type of cornerback, he's going to end up winning it. So you guys both have, I believe, Garrett Wilson ranked above Davante Adams here. Is that just because, like, we've seen Wilson perform better? Do you think Davante Adams is eventually going to end up like clicking with Aaron Rodgers? Like, the fuck's going on in New York here?
I mean, I think that Adams is going to be clicking with Aaron Rodgers, and that I don't worry about that. And I think the fact that teams are viewing it as we need to. I guess I'm partly ranking that. If we're going to see Adams get the primary focus of like shadow coverage, if it was flip-flop, I would probably actually prefer Adams. But right now, if you're telling me there's a situation where Rodgers actually prefers to throw to both of those guys, we've seen both those guys have insane targets, and I know that there's a chance that the younger one is not going to see a ton of that. I really like Garrett Wilson right now.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. It's just the fact that he's going to be continuously seeing that lighter coverage. At
what point do they flip? At what point do like maybe we should cover Garrett?
Well, that I guess that's the question: is do teams that have the history and rapport that we've seen with Rodgers and Adams, and they just traded for him? It feels like you got to pick a poison. Like you got to pick one. And are you really going to say we're going to leave Adams? I don't know.
Right. It doesn't feel like any good options. And I guess if you're an opposing team, Adams is probably scarier.
I'll go out on a limb and I'll say it, and it's probably going to not be something that a lot of people want to hear, and it probably will get some pushback. But I don't believe that Adams is the same player that he was in years past.
Really?
I don't. And we haven't really seen any indication as to Adams being that guy. Really, even going back to last year, I know, a lot of the Netflix stuff that we saw was bad quarterback play and he needs to get out of here before he gets killed and yada, yada, yada. But he had like 3 good games last year. Legitimately, like 3 good games where he was a wide receiver 1. This year, we still haven't really seen that come to fruition either. I know he just got here and he can find some touchdowns with Aaron Rodgers, but mix Adams potentially being just not a bad player, but a little bit of a slower player than he's been in years past. Maybe not, as elite as he has been. Garrett Wilson on the other side, and then still just this Jets offense being a bad offense. Let's just be honest with it. They aren't a good offense. I think we should temper the expectations with Adams a little bit. I would not be viewing Adams as a low-end wide receiver 1 moving forward, and I said that when he first got traded over here. I said that I felt like he could be a top 12 guy the rest of the year. I no longer believe that after seeing that for 2 weeks.
It's really hard to, okay, so you have Marv. You guys have Marv as 18-19. Obviously, the matchup is tough against Chicago. Yeah. You would take Marv over Davante Adams rest of the season?
They're close, but I think I'd lean Marv.
I would take Marv, yeah. I'm thinking about it.
Marv feels like the right answer, but
Marv does feel the right answer. It's just, to me, the reason I pause is because it's been inconsistent still. With
really
Marv.
inconsistent.
Like, I feel like it's easy to say Marv and be confident after a good week, but if you look at the season body
That's what
of work
I mean.
as a
Adams
whole,
is coming off a bad week. Marv's coming off a good week, and I'm like, are we just going to flip-flop back and forth? I still feel like Davante's got the juice. I also think the Jets, as much shit as they get, I really don't think their offense has been that bad in recent weeks since all the changes have happened. I think there's just something still a little bit off, and I do think they'll dial it in. That is the good part about having the the veteran experience of Rodgers and Davante. This happened so many times with Rodgers in Green Bay. The RELA, relax, everybody. That happened every year with them, where they would start off slow. They needed to click a little bit. And this is a personnel package where you got Breece, Davante, Garrett Wilson. The O-line, a little bit shaky, obviously, but I still think second half of the year, this team has a lot of upside on offense.
That's what I was going to say, is that I think, to me, it feels like it's kind of out of sync a little bit, but this might sound crazy because the Jets have been what they've been so far this year, which you could definitely make the case that they've been poor on offense, but I feel like it's you'll catch it clicking, and if they do, I wouldn't be surprised to see the offense really pop.
Agreed.
The one thing that can help them, though, is that the defense has taken a pretty significant step back since Robert Saleh left, and if their defense is bad, more offensive opportunity.
Their defense is bad.
Yeah,
really bad.
It's crazy quickly.
When you went into the season, you're like, all right, this defense could be legitimate, and it's legitimately terrible.
Yeah, I mean, they get rid of a lot of firepower on their D line. Bryce Huff's gone. McDonald got injured, obviously. We've also been dealing with DJ Reed injured, Michael Carter injured.
Pulled out.
Yeah, so it's exactly. So it's a lot of these pieces that were not there, and then it's almost just you have one ultra talented, defensive back that's kind of holding down the entire fort now. So it's it's kind of a problem. But yeah, I agree. I think the other issue too is it's hard to project the upside only because they're such a slow offense, and they don't run fast paced. They don't run a lot of plays. So they need to be ultra efficient in order to get home. But they're going to have days where they probably are really efficient.
It's funny you said that about Adams because it was last year, in between last year and this year, that Adams was literally you could tell he was angry on that podcast. I don't know if you caught that, where he's like, I'm still very much the same player. And
they all say that shit, though.
I know that he does say that.
told us that too.
Mm-hmm. I do feel like the body of work that he had last year, I personally throw out the window, because how can you credit that against him, really? That offense was...
I agree. Even Matt Harmon's RP profile on him last year was he's still elite. It's just a lot of QB play. But that falls off quickly.
That was a step down. If you go look at the RP profile, the numbers were worse universally from the year before.
Yeah.
They were still elite, but they were worse from the year before.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be I think there's just undoubtedly in my mind going to be a week where Adams goes fuck off.
For sure. I'm not saying that he can't do it. I'm just saying the consistent wide receiver 1 play, I do not believe that exists right now.
All right, let's keep moving down the wide receiver 2s, and we got DJ Moore at 17, MHJ at 18, Amari Cooper at 19, Tank Dell at 20. So we got a 5-spot difference here. Adam, you got him at 19, Tank Dell I'm referring to, and Andrew, you got him down at 24. They're at the New York Jets on Thursday Night Football. Yep. Tank Dell is obviously now the focus of the opposing passing teams at this point.
See sauce.
Should see sauce. I don't know that he warrants a ton of sauce coverage.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does the sauce shadow? I feel like he plays a side of the
I was going to say that. I also don't think that he's going to go. I think he does play a side, and I don't think he's going to I feel like Tank's still going to be a ton in the slot.
Yeah. I think without Nico, without Diggs, I guess the problem with Tank right now is the O-line in Houston's been awful. CJ Stroud is getting pressured at an insane rate. The other thing, okay, we look at great quarterbacks, right? And a lot of times it's like, okay, they have injuries, and it's like, okay, next man up, we're still going to throw for 275, 300, and other people are just going to fill in. It's just not happening with Stroud at this point. So it's almost just like
that thing off.
Right. So you got to like adjust expectations of what Stroud's weekly ceiling is from like a yardage standpoint, where when you don't have Nico catching 60-yard passes, like you're not going to finish with 300 passing yards anymore. And it's not like, okay, Tank Dell's a shoe-in for 80 and a touchdown. Obviously, I think his floor is really high now, and he's been like scoring touchdowns when these other guys are injured. So I still think he's a really good play and a really solid wide receiver too. But like, how are you looking at the Houston receiving core right now? Tank Dell, like, I got no interest in John Mechie. I got no interest in Xavier Hutchinson. It's just Mixon and Tank.
Woods. None of them guys.
I think that's the thing.
No.
Robert Woods. Man, I feel like I've been cooled on him for a while.
I saw him on the field last week, and I was like, what the hell?
When I saw him taking punts a while back, I'm like, that's crazy. He seems so old to be taking punts. But with Tank, he's the only person. I guess part of my ranking here is that it's kind of like I'm pushing him up a little bit, my rankings in the come on, man. Like, let me get a high target week out of you. Because if it doesn't happen soon, we've had the 1 week where he had 9 targets, but last week he's 4. It just feels like when we saw last year a little short burst and barrage of Tank Dell having a huge amount of targets. This feels like as good a time as any to be telling me that Tank Dell, although the offense has its problems, has to get at least 8 targets, and I think he does have the juice to take some of those, even in that offense that is currently assembled.
Yeah.
But I don't care about the receiving game outside of him, honestly.
I'm very nervous about Tank Dell because even with Nico Collins being out of the lineup for the last couple of weeks, like he still gave us a goose egg the week before last against Green Bay. Last week, like he got those 4 targets for 25 yards and a touchdown. Like if he doesn't get the touchdown, the day's cooked.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like Tank Dell, he's moving up my rankings by default because of added opportunity, but we haven't seen him do it this year with the production. So I'm with you. Like I need to see the high target game. I need to see the volume. And I need to see him capitalize on the volume.
So basically what you're saying is he's sittable. He's sittable even in this like pristine opportunity.
I would be finding a way to put him in my lineup, but I would still view him as kind of a riskier play.
I think I have him right now as high as I do because Diggs was still eating, right? So it's like, all right, well, you don't have Nico or Diggs. I feel like even if there's just no one else on the offense that to me is going to just guarantee command those targets. I'm hoping that it's Tank. So I don't think I'd put him as sittable, but if you had a pretty solid team, you could. I think that after this week, if it's not 7 targets and let's say he has 7 targets with a lot of air yards. I mean, if he has a bad week, he has a bad week. But I need to see that to be. If that was not the case, I mean, I'm 100% sitting him next week.
It feels very much like this week could be a like rest of season defining moment for Tank Dell.
I know we said that.
Crazy. We've been in week 9 at this point.
We said that after the Nico injury, and he had the game where he had 9 targets, and it feels like he kind of got a little bit of a pass after that. But now it's like, all right, I'm right back here with you.
There is nobody else here with you, Tank. Like you got to show up.
I'm going to be honest too. The other thing about this offense that I didn't see coming was this is also with Dalton Schultz doing nothing too. Dalton Schultz has done nothing.
Yeah, I mean he didn't not much last week, but enough for me. In the Idiot League Mates.
I couldn't make that finger stronger if I tried. All right, let's keep moving now. We've got Khalil Shakir at 21, Chris Olave at 22. So we have a massive difference. Why do you have him at 33?
Yeah, when I had this ranking, I think I just adjusted it because I was still thinking there was a chance Carr was not coming back, and he had a great week without Carr as well. He's going to be coming up probably pretty significantly. I think that though I want to see more consistency out of Chris Olave, but 33 is way too low for sure.
I mean, Carolina, they just donate fantasy points.
Actually, that was going to be something I talked about. We're not doing the running back video, but Carolina on the ground, I think, especially with Carr being a little bit injured, if he is back, they're constantly destroying teams. Carolina can be had on the ground, so I think that part of it will be Kamara could just go off.
Yeah. I just think for me with what we saw last week, and obviously it's hard to tell with guys like Hayner and Rattler playing quarterback for them at times, but it looked like Chris Olave with Rashid Shaheed off of the football field was working a little bit more deep, like playing a little bit more downfield, and I'd like to see that big play ability out of Carr, especially, out of Olave, especially once we get Carr in the lineup.
Yeah, with like Olave and Carr and no Shaheed all on the field, like that trifecta happening at the same time, Olave, I feel like, has a lot of upside going forward.
A ton of upside, and we talked about it on our trade episode a couple weeks ago. The rest of the season schedule for Olave is very nice.
Yeah.
I think I mean, everything has lined up almost perfectly for Olave right now. Like, he could really close out the year very strong for fantasy teams.
Yes, sir. And you want to talk about something lining up perfectly. We got Josh Downs right underneath him at 23. So we got the news that A-Rich is getting benched.
He was never getting benched for Flacco, right?
Correct. I still agree. I still think A-Rich is out there and we not. Joe Flacco is now under center. We won't really talk about the whole situation, but that just means arrows up for all the receivers now.
Sure. Is Joe Flacco that intimidating? Like, he seems like he's now single-handedly going to end up killing the career of
he's
what we
just
thought
a
were
grumpy
talented
old
quarterbacks.
man that, you got to put him on the field.
Well, he's anything but grumpy, but he's definitely an old man.
I feel like, I don't know, I guess the coaching staff probably looks at the team and they say, we're just as good, if not a better roster than we were last year. We were just outside of the playoff picture. They didn't make the playoffs, right? They were fighting for it.
They were a wild card, I thought.
Wild card.
Okay, they got into. Okay, great. So even better. Like, they got into the wild card as the team they were last year with Gardner Minshew instead of Joe Flacco. They probably felt like they were losing the locker room a little bit with A-Rich. And they're like, if we were a wild card team last year, we think our roster is improved this year, and we did that with Minshew. Like, maybe, and you look at the division too; it's a lot weaker than we projected. Jacksonville stinks. Tennessee stinks. Houston's like doing well, but like they're not a great team right now. Right. So they probably think like we have a legitimate shot at like making a real run here. Maybe we can get to the second round of the playoffs. Maybe we can win a playoff game, maybe even win our division, like something like that, where I think that's probably what they were thinking right now and believe that they could do that with Flacco.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple different opinions that I guess I can just rip through really quickly. But one, Jim Irsay is a little bit of a squirrely owner. Like, he feels like he is all over the place at times, and I can't imagine that he didn't have a little bit of say in the benching of Anthony Richardson. That's obviously very speculative. I don't think that the benching of Anthony Richardson, I just want to make it clear right now, I don't think it was the best decision for the Colts. I don't understand why you draft a developmental quarterback that hasn't played a lot since high school to then not let him develop at the NFL level. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But also, Anthony Richardson didn't really do himself many favors, and I think whether people want to read into it too much or too little, I think maybe the tapping on the helmet and asking for substitutions in the middle of games isn't the greatest look when you're not playing great ball.
I felt like that was super overblown, but then you also see a lot of former NFL players, the ones that are like broadcasters, coming out and had problems with it. I'm like, maybe I guess it is a bigger problem in the locker room.
Pat McAfee ripped.
Pat McAfee, Jason Kelsey, I think said it too. I can't even remember, but
too.
they all had problems with it.
Yeah, I think, I don't know how to put it other than just the further along you get in the season, a lot of the overall down the window or looking out the window, as Nick was last week after
Monday
the game.
morning. Yeah.
Like, I think that you get on this point with you're talking about Irsay's pressure that it's time to win now. Like, a lot of the stuff that you're thinking about in the future with Anthony Richardson and how great that could be goes out the window because you feel like you have a team that can win right now. The division, I think, comes into play only because you're looking to just make the playoffs, but I think they genuinely don't think Anthony Richardson right now obviously is ready to lead a team. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. If you have any other player than quarterback doing that, I don't think it gets looked at all. But the fact that that's your quarterback right now, it's not playing well, just saying I need a blow, obviously is not, from a leadership perspective, going to have this team in the best situation. So I think they're looking at a guy like Flacco, who's a pro's pro. This guy literally goes from the couch to taking a team to the playoffs last year that shouldn't have been in the playoffs, really.
Have you seen the side-by-side graphics of the start of Josh Allen's career and the start of Anthony Richardson?
I was just looking at it on an article. It's got to be pasted everywhere now.
I mean, like that's
everywhere.
been like the most, I feel like, kind of like tired narrative now forever. Just like keep comparing the two and they're like, oh, this and that and whatever. But it's just like, it feels fucking stupid.
And I also want to, I just asked just if you'd seen it because it's been floating around, but also like it needs to go without saying that Josh Allen is an outlier of outliers. Like that type of rapid development does not happen typically for quarterbacks.
Yeah, and also like the situation is completely different here because Indy's receiving core is a million times better than Josh Allen's was when in the first couple of years.
Absolutely.
He was someone like Robert Foster was like his wide receiver one there for like 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely with A-Rich, right? I think the other thing is he's a guy that was crazy confident last year. I remember when he won the starting job, crazy confident, he got hurt, and then he seemed to have a ton of confidence week one. I feel like if you're an athletic quarterback like him, his arm was not going to be the reason. He's not going to be like a passing technician that's just beating you that way. And when this injury feels like it's been kind of lingering for him, where it's like, okay, that for his style of play, if you're not going to be the athletic specimen that he is at the highest level, it feels like he lost a ton of confidence in his play.
Dude, well, so obviously with the fact that I have him now and you're idiot league mates, I was going back and like watching the film and stuff. And I said this last week and I think, this week as well, and like the recaps or whatever, in terms of how I felt about A-Rich going forward. This was another situation where I genuinely believe he was a couple inches away from having like a 22-point fantasy game instead of 10 points this week. I watched the film. I had very few problems with the way that he actually played. It was a lot like CJ Stroud, where he was under pressure on like 60% of his dropbacks. Joe Flacco will not be able to escape 90% of the things that A-Rich escaped. The offensive design is fucking weird too. Every throw is like 12 yards past the sticks. They don't have any easy layup throws for him, so every single drive ends up being 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 11 or 3rd and 10. And I'm like, that's an awful situation to put in the accurate thrower into it. He makes bad throws sometimes, for sure, and bad reads. I'm not putting that against him, but they're not helping him out whatsoever in the passing game, and his receivers keep fucking dropping touchdowns. There was like 4 drop touchdowns that were right in the fucking breadbasket this week.
I was going to say that Shane Steichen to me was actually a huge part of you're thinking what happened with Jalen Hurts and A-Rich was such an easy comparison for me. And it feels like, I don't know, it does feel like they're misusing him a little bit from a standpoint of obviously he's a guy that can throw the ball downfield. He has a big arm. But he's also, you're not giving him any easy looks, right? Like sometimes you want a free throw to see the ball go in.
Get him at 3rd and 4 because that's when the running threat happens. But you're 3rd and 11, sure, he can run for 14 yards, but defenses, that's not hard to stop when you're that long. And I'm looking back, sure, there are shorter routes, but none of them are ever open. They're not creative. And I'm like, this is not what Shane Steichen, I feel like, does well.
I do feel like, and we were talking about Josh Downs, though,
facts. I was like, we're not going to get into the cute quarterback situation 14 minutes later.
Jesus.
There's just no way that, for me, Josh Downs has been fine regardless. He's a really nice player. There's no debate from my end there, but I'd much rather have Joe Flacco and Josh Downs than I would A-Rich. So for me,
oh really?
Yeah.
What a hot take.
You were telling. I remember very strong. I feel like I'm talking directly to you, because you're telling me that you don't have much of a difference between the two of them. I've always had a much higher difference. I felt.
What did Josh Downs do last week?
Josh Downs? What do you mean?
Well, 70-yard touchdown piece from A-Rich. How you doing?
That's fair.
How you doing?
How's A-Rich doing this week?
It's fun. He's literally resting. He's literally getting better mentally.
That's fair.
All right. Anyways, Josh Downs, I think he's a smash start with Joe Flacco. Obviously, we've seen the target numbers with him. We've seen the efficiency, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's just a huge boost to all the receivers. We're not telling you anything new here.
Yeah,
I don't think.
Just to conclude, I guess really, you do have Pittman at 38 though. You just it's that significant of a gap from Josh Downs to Pittman.
Yeah, I think so. I think Pittman to me is still going to be a little more volatile.
Okay. I think both of these guys can be plugged into your lineup. To me, 38 doesn't feel like you're plugging them into your lineup at all, but I feel like you can play both of those guys.
I'm not saying I shouldn't. My ranking isn't meant to be reflective of you can't play Pittman. I think I have a much lower floor for Pittman than I do for Downs.
I wouldn't have him as low as 38, but I do have much more hesitancy towards Pittman than I do with Downs for sure.
So do you feel like 27 is too high? I have Downs at 21, but I have Pittman at 27.
27 probably feels about right in the 27 to 30 range. I think is good. He's not an auto start for you, but you feel pretty good about getting him into your lineup in a PPR format. But at the same time, if Josh Downs had a bad game, I would be surprised. If Pittman had a bad game, I don't think I'd be overly surprised.
Is that just the way that they're utilized?
Yeah.
It's a little bit more.
If Pittman goes 4 for 50, wouldn't surprise me. If Josh Downs goes 3 for 30, I would be like, fuck's going on here?
I agree. I agree. I think from the standpoint of receptions, there's a lot more volatility from Pittman. Exactly. Where I think Downs has upside as well as a really nice floor.
Yeah, he's just a great fucking player. He's fun. All right, let's keep moving down to the wide receiver 3 section. We got Courtland Sutton at 25. We got BTJ at 26. Now we have a pretty big disparity there of 11 spots. So this is injury related. I'm assuming he came out originally with a chest rib injury last week, and the initial report was 2 to 4 weeks, and now they are kind of swaying it to day to day.
Yeah.
I also I'm not super buying it either. This might be just a straight up pain tolerance thing, but it's super different from player to player. Whereas we saw Jaden Daniels just played through it, Derek Carr missed 3 weeks, so I don't know that I buy that he plays right away or if he's super effective playing on it right away. But I think with the injuries, I could probably just speak for you guys. With the injuries to the receiving core, Kirk, Gabe Davis, he's an auto start if he's active.
For sure. And
Definitely.
the matchup for Philly is really good for him as well. They haven't been good against
Philly's been
wide
getting
receivers.
better, though. Philly's been getting
They've
better
been getting
secondary-wise.
But they still struggle a little bit against the wide receiver.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, for me, an injury-related thing where I got him at 31 because I feel like I'm going to be moving him down when he's not playing. He could play. Right now I'm very.
You're going to move him down if he doesn't play? You're not going to move him up if he's inactive?
I guess my point is every time I tinker with my rankings, I'm like putting him down without even having news. I feel like he's not going to play. So
if he doesn't play, I'm keeping him right here.
Yeah,
I love that.
Move him up. He's a must
put him
start
all the
this
way to
week.
the. Let me ask you then, where would you put him if he does play?
Right here.
Let's say,
your ranking is
Right here.
him playing, right?
okay, really interesting.
Yeah, I think if he plays, this is more so a guy that I'm plugging in as a wide receiver too, a low-end wide receiver too. I think that probably accounts for the banged-up nature of which he could play with. Because when I'm looking at like DJ Moore and Brian Thomas Jr., maybe hot take, maybe not. I think Brian Thomas is more talented, has the better matchup this week, so I would play him.
Like if BTJ went into this game and he didn't get injured last game, he'd be like a borderline wide receiver 1.
I guess that's why I was surprised when you say leave him at 20.
Yeah,
I would have him,
It's more so him banged up.
Yeah, especially this week. For me, you have that line on the rankings just at 12 there. There's a lot more question marks this week in the middle because of the buys. Remember last week we had no buys.
Yep.
The rankings felt a lot different this week than last week. So I would have BTJ if he's playing. I'd put,
there's not that many buys, though. It's really just Debo and Pickens as relevant
It
receivers.
does feel like it shallows out a lot. Maybe it's just because now we're starting to
but there's
feel all of the injuries as well.
That's what I was just going to say too, Bo. Yep,
Man, it does feel like it shallowed out a lot this week.
for sure.
All right, let's keep moving down. We've got Darnell Mooney at 27. We've got Lab McConkey coming off a big game down at 28. Cedric Tillman at 29. Maybe we should talk about those two because we have 6 spot differences where, Andrew, you are a lot lower than Adam is on Lad and Cedric Tillman. Now, of course, Lad is coming off the monster game. Now they play at Cleveland. Herbert and the Chargers have been a much pass-heavier team over the last month or so. They're letting him sling it a little bit. Cedric Tillman has obviously popped off with Jameis Winston under quarterback, big games and back-to-back games. They play against each other. Now, I think there's like an easy case to be made. Like both these offenses are kind of throwing it and humming a little bit, and like this could be a high-scoring game. But I think at the end of the day, like the core of these teams is like slow defense. Let's not throw the ball 35 times a game. So it's kind of like, rubber meets the road here. Let's talk about Lad versus Cedric Tillman here.
The pace of the game to me that you just talked about was where pushed them actually down. I was going to have them bullishly high. And then I was like, all right, the pace of this game could end up being low.
It's like I think they want the pace of the game to be low, but I don't know that they have the personnel to do it between Dobbins and Nick Chubb.
The thing is that it doesn't have to be. I think
they'll
by
force
design. Yeah, they could end up getting that way by design. The thing about it is with Tillman especially, I'll start with. Was obviously last week.
Yeah, it's a Browns fan. Tillman, let's go. Fucking feed us.
Zach Jackson, the athletic reporter, one of the beat reporters, he's went to the same the opposing high school, like rival school. So I like to get bits of information from him, kind of just messing around. Like, where'd you get that? Obviously, it was either watching a practice or somewhere small. Mm-hmm. He was very high on Tillman because the Browns were talking about using him a lot. But I'm like, they just brought in Judy. Like, I just don't see how this is even a thing. Mm-hmm. Tillman with 12 targets out of nowhere was 2 weeks ago. You're like, all right, like, is this sustainable? And then when he has 9 this last week, he's getting 22% target share the last 2 weeks. And
that's it. Those targets were only
22 and a half. Damn. Yeah. Well, because
I guess all the other guys.
That's what I was going to say is because Judy had a good, Elijah Moore had a week, like David Njoku's had a week. With Jameis Winston, all of a sudden they're throwing the ball a ton, and they're playing Baltimore last week, so you're going to need to score a lot of points.
They've also been pretty weak to wide receivers too. So
true.
Baltimore's D kind of been cheeks.
Yeah.
I just think that to me is, I don't know. I feel like I have to 2 weeks in a row buy into it, and if I get hurt, I get hurt.
This is such the game that everyone's like now bought into Tillman. He's so gonna flop this week.
This is the Dontavion Wicks week where everyone was like, "We love Wicks." Yeah, I'm not wishing that on Tillman, but I have him at 33.
Yeah, you are.
I think really what it is just I'm comfortable throwing him in as a flex play if I need him as my flex play off the waiver wire. But I am I mentioned on my waiver wire show this week that if you're picking him up, the matchup against Los Angeles is tougher. They've been pretty good against the wide receiver position. And then also when you were picking him up, the Browns are on bye next week too. So it was kind of like you may pick him up, not want to play him this week, can't play him next week on bye, and then you're waiting 3 weeks to play Tillman. So really, I think he's okay play. I'm not forcing him in my lineup, but him and McConkey, I would rather have McConkey in that matchup. But McConkey also, it feels like the 2 touchdowns. How often is that going to happen? Probably not very often.
I mean, I don't think it's like people are expecting 2 touchdowns. I think they're just like, wow, he's getting really involved in the offense now, and he could be their one.
Yeah, and I agree he can be their one, but to me that still feels like a wide receiver 2 in fantasy.
I mean, that's pretty good though for a rookie.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying I like Ladd McConkey. You asked me to justify my ranking. That's kind of why I have him there.
You got him at 29.
Yeah.
That ain't wide receiver 2. I will say Quentin Johnson and I believe DJ Chark are both going to be back this week, which obviously might spread the targets out a little bit more. But I do think I mean, it's week 9, right? Second half of the season now. This is when rookie wide receivers tend to have their kind of accentuation of play time and target opportunity. And we see a lot of breakouts over the second half of the year for these rookies. So we got Ladd, we got Cedric, we got Calvin Ridley, we got Xavier Worthy. Talk about a second half of the year breakout. Probably not happening with this man. Calvin Ridley, though.
The only thing I was going to say with Xavier Worthy, I don't disagree that he's going to I don't think the breakout that people probably want to see is coming, but he's quietly had 8 targets the last 2 weeks.
He's had a lot of targets, but it still feels like even watching him, it's just like this dude's not really built to be like a real NFL like possession wide receiver at all.
It does feel like though somehow that I don't know if I want to use this word, but it feels like they're kind of forced to. They're trying to get him involved too much.
Right. It's like they made the pick and now they're like, we have to use him.
It's like, yeah, I mean, I was going to use the word gimmicky. He feels pretty gimmicky.
There's very little that he's done this year that wasn't gimmicky.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that I can name like a single like good play he's had that wasn't just like a deep shot or a screen line of scrimmage play.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really point to something and say like Xavier Worthy won on this play because of. Yeah.
There's been no like 6 for 80 touchdown games. Yeah. They're just like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the matchup's fine against Tampa. I don't know, man. I can't really trust.
Let's talk about Ridley, though.
City.
Ridley just finally had like his one good game. Plays against New England. We'll probably see Christian Gonzalez for the majority of the game. Ridley's obviously like an impossible like get a read on player. He was a dude that in our trade video, I was like, no one wants him. Like throw him in as like as a trade target because the schedule gets so good at the end of the year. Ridley has this huge game, and I'm like, okay, it's the first game without D-Hop. But, like, he was getting targets without D-Hop there before. It wasn't, like, any lack of opportunity. I don't know. Where do you think that game came from, and, like, what do we expect him going forward?
Yeah, I think one of the things that it seems to me, a guy like Mason Rudolph, who's just he's a journeyman, right? The one thing those guys do is they know who's going to get open and who to just continue to focus on. Without D-Hop, it's like, all right, Mason Rudolph he's probably worried about turning the ball over all the time. He doesn't want to. He just get the ball to Calvin Ridley. I think Christian Gonzalez matchup this week is the only reason I didn't put him up into the wide receiver 2 range. Moving forward, I really like it for Ridley, but this week is feeling a little bit like I could see reality setting in where it's much more like the prior weeks.
Yeah, it's like having to bet on Mason Rudolph being a good quarterback too doesn't feel good.
No, not at all.
All right, so we got Michael Pittman at 32. We got Jacoby Myers, 33. JSN at 34. Romeo Doubs, 35. D-Hop at 36. So let's kind of pause there for a second on the Green Bay wide receivers because there is a good chance that we have Malik Willis under center. And we kind of played this game before. Malik Willis has been decent for them under center. I don't know that it's led to a ton of like fantasy goodness from the receivers there. He's had fantasy good days. We've had a day where Josh Jacobs went crazy, and then the next week he didn't really do anything under Malik, and like Jaden Reed was pretty like it's a messy situation there. So you guys have Jaden Reed all the way up at consensus 13, Romeo Doubs down at 35. Like let's say obviously if Jordan Love's playing, you're playing those guys, but if Malik Willis is under center, you're going against Detroit, which they score a lot of points, but if you look at all the numbers like EPA per play against pass, like PFF grades, they're not only great against the run, they've been really, really good against the pass as well. This feels like an expose game for Malik Willis, in my opinion, if he is the quarterback under center. I'd be really hesitant to start. Like, I'm going to get Jaden Reed in my lineup because he's Jaden Reed at this point, but I don't really feel good about any of the other exterior pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. It's felt fairly quiet on Jordan Love so far. Like, yeah. I don't really know what is even going on at this point. I know it was a groin injury, and they said Schefter had the one tweet where it was like, good news, it came back as just a strain, right? A groin strain.
Yes, yeah.
And that's it. Like, we haven't heard anything else since then.
Yeah, I'm operating on...
We'll get a practice report today probably at some point.
I'm kind of operating, at least right now, from the standpoint that I think it's leaning more that he's going to miss this week. So to the point you're making here, if Malik Willis is out there, The other receivers, I can almost have no confidence in. I feel like Jaden Reed's a guy that you can use in whatever role you want to. You give him a lot more touches around the line of scrimmage to help out Malik. But I don't know. I think weekly it's not that you feel horrible about any of the other Green Bay receivers, but they already feel like you're kind of spraying and praying a little bit with those other guys. And now with Malik, it's like, no thank you for the rest of the
Okay, so, I mean, you said you're operating as if Malik Willis is the quarterback. So you have Jaden Reed as your wide receiver 12.
I'm leaning right now. I'm leaning towards that he will play. I think Jaden Reed, if that is confirmed, he would come down some, but I still put him as a wide receiver 2. Even with Malik, I think that they could get him a lot of touches even at around the line of scrimmage. Obviously, these games were worse without.
Okay, so let's play this game then. Malik Willis is the starter. Okay. Do you play Jaden Reed or Tank Dell?
Jaden Reed.
Jaden Reed. But it's I think that's about where I have him. And I think I have, what do I have Tank at 19? So yeah, I put him as a wide receiver 2, but I'd push him down, I don't know, 5 spots or so if it was Malik versus Jordan Love.
Okay, Jaden Reed versus Josh Downs.
Jaden Reed still, but you're making me think maybe I need to put Josh Downs up higher.
Agreed. Yeah, I that one felt different there. That was like, I think probably Josh Downs. When I'm looking at the rankings, I'm like, we're kind of a little bit low on Josh Downs then relative to Tank.
Yeah, actually, as you're saying that, I'm looking through Josh Downs or Tank Dell. Where do you're going Josh Downs this week?
Yeah, I'd go Downs.
I got Downs over Dell already, so
yeah.
I go Downs over Dell. I think I'd go Downs over Jaden Reed if Malik Willis is playing.
Really?
Reed's actually been relatively, like, he started the year off with a bang, and then he had another really big game in the middle of like some subpar games. But since the receivers have been at full strength, he hasn't been like the set it and forget it wide receiver 1 over the last like 2 or 3 weeks. He's coming back down to earth, and obviously those games are probably going to happen again. But I don't know, with Malik under center, I'm going Downs there, who I feel a lot more confident in.
The other thing that you mentioned how good their defense is, and there's no denying Detroit's team in general is like, every week you're like, this team is scary as shit.
They are so well operated, and the fact that they lost Hutch, and it's just like, it will matter. Obviously, their pass rush is going to hurt, but they are such a good team.
Campbell's speech where he talked about like when they were literally wounded and getting that city right is just is low key goosebumps every time to see how good
it's just aging so well.
It's outrageous. But I think the reason that all that's true, even with Malik under center, I think you could kind of go with this game plan of we're just going to kind of run and pound the football. With some of those games where it's down with Reed, I feel like this is going to be a game where you can't just have a low-scoring affair versus Detroit. I think that's going to another.
If Jordan Love was playing, this over/under would probably be the highest on the year. It would probably be like a 53.5 point over.
It would feel,
which is so disappointing.
It's funny you say that. If he's under center, it feels to me very much like that game was supposed to be in Mexico City that they brought back with the Rams and the Chiefs, where it's like everybody just wants to see this game.
Yeah, it would have been fucking
phenomenal. Did you? Dan Campbell, I don't know if he was trolling or not, but they were asking him if they're going to make a big move at the deadline. He was like all giddy and stuff. He's like, Brad might have brought me something, maybe not.
Dude, it's funny because he's just so passionate about it. You could just tell. Like when they drafted Gibbs to see how they freaked out and stuff. It's kind of cool to see someone that
pounding
passionate.
the table and stuff. Yeah, dude.
All right, let's keep moving down. We got Dobbs there. We've got DeAndre Hopkins at 36. Second game in KC, should probably get a little bit more involved. I think he's someone who he'll age better throughout the season, I think. And
Reed already said it, too. He said he will be more involved this week.
Yeah, I think he said that last week, too. He was like, he's going to be really involved this first week, and just didn't really happen. But
did he say that last week?
He did. He said he should get a significant amount of snaps. But regardless, D-Hop will get better and better. I don't think you need to shy away from getting him into your lineup, to be honest with you. You got Keon Coleman at 37. T. Higgins, the fucking cone of all cones, down there at 38. Considered day-to-day. I'm just going to assume he's not playing for another month. We got Keenan Allen at 39. We got another cone, Jordan Addison. What the fuck's Jordan Addison doing out there in Minnesota, bro? And why you guys have him at 40 against Indy?
Free 3, baby. Free 3.
Free 3 is facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, free this motherfucker.
Yeah, they talked about that. Jordan Addison was like, I've been saying this since Pitt. It ain't about getting traded. But why do we have him down here?
No, I don't know. I don't like. It's not wrong. I'm just like, what the fuck?
Grow
up at some point.
I think the offense has taken a step back over the last couple of weeks. The team hasn't looked as good. The defense has taken a step back over the last couple of weeks. They just lost the left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, traded for Cam Robinson.
Big trade for you guys.
Big trade for us. But I just think right now, and also I am assuming that T.J. Hawkinson is officially back in the lineup this week. So
that's fair. Yeah,
that
got
should
activated. Yeah,
take a little bit of everything away from.
You're gonna be playing him right off the rip, TJ.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tight end position. So at this point, I feel like, you get 6 from somebody on the waiver wire. You get 6 from TJ Hawkinson.
You know what's crazy? It's been an absolute shit show. This last week, there was 18 tight ends that had 10 points, which is like
it's National
Tight End Day went crazy.
I know that number. I don't know. I've been paying attention. Like nobody's hardly scoring 10 points every week.
No. We were talking about this. We did Jeopardy yesterday, and we did like a national tight end category for it. There was 16 different tight ends scored touchdowns on National Tight End Day. Like a bunch of them had 2 touchdowns. Pitts, and like all those dudes. And it's funny because like Brock Bowers, the number one guy, probably had the worst. I think he was like the tight end 18 on the week.
Yeah.
He had like 11 points or 5 for 50, 6 for 50, whatever. That would have been good for like tight end 2 or 3 in week 1.
Right.
Like that's like where the position is at.
You had
right
guys
now.
like Adam Troutman out there scoring touchdowns and catching footballs. Like,
Bo Nix. Fuck that motherfucker.
Thank God for best ball.
Shout out Bo Nix, bro.
Dude, thank God for best ball. Like I play in a lot of best ball leagues where the rosters that I have, you know how many in lineup league I had Pitts on the bench. I had like come on, like why? So annoying.
I still don't think he scored that second touchdown.
No chance. That was a fumble. That was a fumble for sure.
You gotta love when the NFL has that score and then Nick has the 2 Pickens things where he's ready to just go crazy on. It's just
fuck that shit.
it's kind of
George
insane.
Pickens. Literally fuck. No, it's not even George Pickens' fault. Like he was everything that I needed him to be. It's honestly Broderick Jones. Like the face mask. I'm gonna kill Broderick Jones.
That's fair.
If he walked in here right now, he's getting
the Nicky axe.
If we had an axe in here, it'd go right to that motherfucker. Fuck Broderick Jones for life.
Jordan Addison has been just putrid though, man.
He's had one good game, and that was I've had him in my lineup every single week except that game.
Well, because this is a conversation for me where like when I'm rostering my teams in fantasy, Jordan Addison is one of those players that I typically shy away from. Now, I don't have the context of the scores that we have at the moment, but so if I remember correctly, for you in your situation, it was Jordan Addison versus Juwan Jennings that week, right? Juwan Jennings coming off the 50-point game. And you had Jordan Addison you were debating between.
And Jordan Addison was also freshly off of a multi-week ankle absence.
Injury. Correct, right? Yeah. So then you, I believe, went with Jennings, and Addison would have been the better play?
Yes.
So then what happens?
Yeah, Addison goes 3 catches for 2 touchdowns.
So
he had a rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
So but then what happens? Now it's like, okay, I missed the Jordan Addison game, and you're hell-bent on, all right, I got to make sure I just keep him in my lineup.
Play Jordan Addison.
And then you'll get to the point where it's honestly I think a better name cachet version of Gabe Davis. Where
damn,
I wouldn't go that far.
He's ranked in the.
I think he's been. I genuinely. I think he's been like he got dealt a pretty bad hand this season because he came into the year injured, obviously, and then like Jalen Naylor was popping off at the beginning of the year where I think those all would have been kind of Addison's like routes and whatever. Doesn't really matter. I think what annoys me the fucking most is. So if you look at the receivers I drafted in your Idiot League mates, right? It was A.J. Brown, it was Cooper Kupp, it was T. Higgins, it was Jordan Addison, Josh Downs. Jeez. We got to week 1 where all those guys were basically injured, week 1, week 2. Yep. I had to drop Josh Downs because I didn't have a playable receiver if I didn't make that move. And now I'm like, man, I can't believe I drafted him because I love that motherfucker, and then I had to drop him out of pure necessity, and I'm like,
tough.
Now he's on Guts roster.
Right, just absolutely eating up points. I would have the Flacco down stack.
Again, it's a better name because I'd obviously much rather prefer Addison than it's like when I have that type of a player, it feels like he's already a boomer bust type of receiver, and it ends up leading to indecision for me with my lineups. Like I don't feel great about part of my ranking is if I'm having a question with a lot of players ahead of Jordan Addison, I'm like I'm going the other way.
Yeah. Fortunately, I don't know that I have that choice with a lot of other players. Addison was like such a good deep threat last year though, and they're not taking any shots to him downfield that are like those touchdown streaks.
Yeah, it's the offense is a little bit different, and I think it's probably just because it's Darnold under center, not Kirk Cousins, obviously.
I was just gonna ask you. I mean, I think you'd be lying to yourself if you thought that this wasn't going to take a little bit of a step back from the early success they were having. But I don't know if I saw it being this different. And I guess for you, with Hopkins coming back, like, is there a reason to believe that the offense is going to kind of rebound, or are you getting pessimistic on the situation?
Also, let me just speak from a fan perspective of this because I feel like that's all I know. I've seen this story, but this is the Vikings season that starts out hot, gives you hope, and then the rest of the way it does what it does.
Damn. Okay.
I think the offense can rebound. The thing that's worrying me right now about the team is more so the defense, because the defense is what was actually keeping us in games.
I was going to say, I think that's another factor here is like you don't need to take those shots when your defense has played elite.
Right, and it allowed Darnold to play good football because he didn't have to do too much. It kept it pretty simple for Darnold. And I think in those scripted plays and when the playbook is a little bit more concise, that's where Darnold and KOC have been really good.
Those stats are so funny about like the first 15 plays scripted being just like elite, and then like everything after that is just like whoa.
Yeah, because it's like it's then when Darnold has to start playing football.
It's so funny because Stefanski coming from Minnesota is honestly, in my opinion, the best opening game drive scripted coach. It's amazing how that is one of their calling cards. It's like that first drive is unbelievable, and then it's like, what happens?
Yeah, I mean, so that being said, I think the defense struggling right now. Our secondary is giving up a ton of points right now, and our pass rush has been okay. Dallas Turner has been on and off the football field right now. He's kind of going through a little bit of a lull. Just a couple other things for Minnesota, but right now the way that the defense is not playing that well, it's making it to where Darnold has to do too much, and it's not making me trust the offense as much. So I think that they can be better with Hawkinson on the field. I mean, it's never going to be bad to add another weapon like TJ Hawkinson. But, yeah, man, it's going to be tough. And I'm very nervous about the loss of Christian Darrisaw. I don't think people who watch football casually understand just how good of a football player Christian Darrisaw is. It's almost the equivalent, and I
don't say Trent Williams.
It's
not true.
It is like losing a player like that on San Francisco. Christian Darrisaw is an all-pro left tackle.
He's a very good left tackle, but Trent Williams is like one of the best left tackles of all time. I saw that narrative, and I knew it was coming out of your mouth already. It's not real.
All-pro.
I agree.
You lose an all-pro left tackle like that, it sucks.
Cam Robinson is going to step in and play fine. I guarantee you the offense is not going to be that much worse with him.
That move is great. He's not Christian Darrisaw, though.
I'm not saying he is, but Christian Darrisaw is not Trent Williams.
Fair enough.
Well, a much different conversation than very good left tackles is Jalen McMillan.
We talked about QBs, left tackles. We've talked about everything but fucking wide receivers today.
Facts.
With Jalen McMillan, what do you guys think, man?
He might be woaded.
I got a lot of shit in your Idiot League mates from a video. Sexy, what's up, my guy? Saying like, I can't believe I didn't go after him. I just, I kind of like McMillan as a dynasty guy, but I've been trying to separating the two, where it's like, all right, I'm not, just because all these opportunities going to come from McMillan, I'm not necessarily buying it. I mean, it was 1 week, so we'll see. But do you guys do you think he's actually voted, or do you think there's an upside?
He has upside if Sterling Shepard's hamstring injury is a problem.
I'm with you there.
Because McMillan will move into the slot if that's the case.
This matchup is horrible for McMillan. It is not going to be good.
Yeah, the Baker expose week is this week.
I'm not excited to put McMillan into my lineup by any means this week. Like I would rather be leaving him on my bench.
You guys, but you play McMillan over Jordan Addison though, probably, right?
No,
I play him just behind.
That's where we're at. Fucking bullshit ass McMillan getting played over.
The crazy part, talking about McMillan, and let's just go ahead and bring tight ends back, is Cade Otton, man.
Yeah.
What in the hell?
I mean, you can keep playing him. You want to know what I thought about when this moment right now, this week, has made me think of a video that we recorded early in the offseason. We did predicting this year's Kyron and Puka and all of the other stuff. Obviously, we said in that video it's hard to predict those, and you're taking a 1 in a million shot. Mm-hmm. I did say Jalen McMillan would be this year's Puka. He was my pick. Fuck no, he ain't gonna be Puka Nacua, baby.
Yeah, he's not playing well. I think Matt Harmon actually did an in-season RP for McMillan.
Did that come out?
I want to say it did.
He does like a bunch of rookies, right? A mid-season one.
Well, he's just been doing players. I think he's done like 20 of them so far. I want to say McMillan was in it, unless I'm pulling data from somewhere else, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. And McMillan's not separating very well. And I think him playing on the outside, this was something we talked about a lot in the offseason, being like, McMillan's a slot dude. That's where he like really played well in Washington. And if like Godwin's moving back to the slot more, which ended up happening, correct, what is McMillan's role, right? That was like verbatim what we were talking about a lot this offseason. So I think if Sterling Shepard's hamstring is like a week-to-week thing where he's out for 2 or 3 weeks and McMillan moves into the slot, he'll become a target for sure for Baker and probably end up being playable. But like last week, he caught 4 balls, and none of them happened until Sterling Shepard ended up getting hurt and him moving into the slot.
That's where, when you made that point, that was to me the clear one. It's like Jalen McMillan, when we talked about it, it's like, okay, can he just be the guy as the wide receiver 2 outside with Godwin in the slot? I think McMillan, if he's not playing the slot, at least for now, is I don't want him even at all, honestly, on my team.
Yeah.
But if he goes to the slot, we'll see. He might have something there. There's a lot of opportunity. I just don't know if they have the talent.
All right, we're going to cut it there. We will see y'all. I'm doing something a little bit different for the running back preview rankings video, which will come out tomorrow most likely. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up. We'll be back with some trade. We're doing a trade review video next, which will probably come out on Friday, I want to say. We're going to look at a bunch of recent trades that happened in the league that we play in against each other and just kind of like talk through them, how we see them playing out and stuff like that. So if you're new here, subscribe. If you enjoyed, hit the button that looks like this. We'll see you when we see you. Hank.
Just watch the damn vid.